Welcome to New York's #2 sports show. The Rangers lose their penultimate game of the season to the Florida Panthers by a score of 3-2. Cole Reinhardt, not Sam Reinhart, Cole Reinhardt scored with 150 left in regulation to give the Panthers a 3-2 lead and eventually the 3-2 win. So 2 games in a row, this one even more so, of clutch tanking regulation losses for the Rangers in what was Jonathan Quick's last NHL game. So, kind of 2 storylines for me here. Jonathan Quick and it being his NHL finale and what it means as far as the standings for the Rangers. I guess let's start standings for the Rangers and where this leaves them now. So, as I'm recording this, the Rangers are guaranteed pre-lottery to either finish third or fourth. The Canucks are locked into the #1 spot, Blackhawks locked in the #2 spot, and it's between the Rangers and the Flames, with the Rangers having the definite leg up in the #3 position. Again, before any lottery takes place, the Rangers are tied in points with the Flames at 75. Rangers have played one more game than the Flames. Flames also have the tiebreaker against the Rangers. So all that needs to happen is that the Flames, forgetting about the Rangers, the way it works chronologically is the Flames, they will be home against the Colorado Avalanche team that has nothing to play for. They have locked in the President's Trophy, so there's no incentive for Colorado. So if Calgary wins that game, it's done. The Ranger Lightning game means absolutely nothing. If Calgary gets 1 point or less, then you see what happens in the Ranger Lightning game. Now, as far as what that looks like, and we'll preview that a little bit after the Panther game, but the Lightning, the division's over. The Sabres have won the Atlantic Division, which isn't great in the sense that, if you're a Ranger fan and you want the Lightning to have something to play for. However, what still might be up for grabs is home ice against Montreal. And in order for that to be up for grabs, Montreal needs to get at least 1 point against the Flyers tomorrow night, which would appear likely because the Flyers, they just clinched the playoff berth themselves and they have nothing to play for now. So one would think that Montreal would probably, again, gain at least a point and then putting Tampa in a position where they would have some incentive to at least have home ice. Now, look, maybe they won't try as hard for home ice as they would for maybe a division title, which is now out of play because Tampa, while they got the 2 points versus Detroit, because they didn't win a regulation against the Red Wings, that took them, and the Sabres won their game in regulation against the Blackhawks. That enabled the Sabres to clinch the division. So, in all likelihood, the Lightning probably will have something to play for, but we don't know for 100% sure. If Montreal loses in regulation to Philly, Tampa's locked in the 2 spot, and then you kind of have a little bit of a problem on your hands. And then it goes to the next situation. If it still is undetermined, you have Calgary home against the Kings Thursday night, the last night of the NHL schedule. And the way that's looking, as I'm recording this, the Kings are very, very close to locking up a playoff berth themselves. And so there won't be that extra level of motivation. However, they will be jockeying for seeding. And if you're the Kings, you do want to avoid Colorado. So for the Kings, there will be some incentive, but not to the degree of, playoff lives, kind of on the line for them. So all of this to say, Rangers are looking pretty good. Things would have to go pretty wrong within those games for the Rangers to not finish behind Vancouver and Chicago at #3, which if that is the case, not bad, right? We had hopes of Chicago, right? There were, but you know what? All said and done, to be #3 and for Calgary to have more points than the Rangers, not a bad place to be. And if that is the case, the Rangers, in a worst case scenario, would be #5 come draft night. So, we'll discuss that more at length, but not bad as far as, where the Rangers are as it pertains to the draft. And it's crazy. Look at these goal differentials. The Rangers are -14, surrounded by a bunch of teams that are in the -40s, -30s. Like the Rangers really, if you look at goal differential, they should be way higher up in the standings. So again, a pretty good scenario where they lost a lot of close games. And, that was, we saw that on full display the last couple of games on the road. But now let's talk Jonathan Quick. Jonathan Quick, again, we didn't know for sure what was going to happen with him as far as that Red Wing game, not this past weekend, but the weekend before, where he almost got the shutout. He got the win. You had a sense that it was very likely that his career was coming to a close, but you didn't know. There was uncertainty, but I guess you kind of felt like maybe he would give it one more go. Look, it would have been very reasonable to say, hey, that's a good place to stop. Last game at Madison Square Garden. But they, had it be a thing where this was his last game. He will not play the Lightning game. My guess for that is I think it might be Dylan Garand with Igor Shesterkin backing up. Nothing's been confirmed there, but I think that makes sense to me to finish out the season, but we'll see what they do. Nothing confirmed. And so that would mean that if that is the case, that Shesterkin's last game was against Dallas. But as far as Quick, all the Rangers in the pregame warmups had number 32 Quick on the back. They did a big thing for this. And Jonathan Quick, look, he's a future Hall of Famer. Don't know if he's a first ballot Hall of Famer, but certainly he will be in the Hall of Fame. No question about that. With his resume as an American goalie. But at 40 years old, look, his best days were behind him. The fact that he lasted 3 seasons with the Rangers is really more than I ever thought would be. I mean, honestly, when he came in that first year, I wasn't sure what to expect. And, he really showed you that he still has that competitive spirit. And, he seems to be beloved in that locker room. They really, really do appreciate him as a teammate. And, I think that, Jonathan Quick, while he probably wanted to go out a winner, his career was unbelievable and really at the Rangers' expense as well in 2014. Obviously, he wins the cup with the Kings against the Rangers. So, but, Quick grew up a Ranger fan and, really was, handled himself really well as a backup for Igor Shesterkin. He accepted his role after having been a starter for a very long time in this league and, wishing Jonathan Quick well in retirement. And so, for next year, we'll see. As far as the backup goalie is concerned, I think Dylan Garand is in the running for that. They may want to bring in a veteran goalie as competition, but Jonathan Quick will not be part of that conversation as this was his last NHL game. Ranger lineup. The one change that was made was they go back to Drew Fortescue and Urho Vakanainen was out of the lineup. And again, the Fortescue thing from the Dallas game, it was a simple matter of it was for contractual reasons. It really, that's mainly what it was. Because if Fortescue hit that 10-game mark, then he would have been subject to an offer sheet when his restricted free agency runs out. And there was other particulars as well. It wasn't just that. So, Fortescue back in there. As far as that last game against Tampa, expected that one where you may see some differences. I couldn't venture to guess what they would be, but that one, maybe they kind of switch it up a bit. But this was basically what we've seen lately. Same lines, same defensive pairs. And, in looking at this game, the Rangers really, really controlled it in the third period. It's kind of amazing when you look at this Panther lineup. The fact that the Rangers somehow lost this game regulation is kind of remarkable. Now, Florida, here's the thing you got to remember. The Panthers had a lineup full of guys that were hungry, right? You're talking about sort of veteran fringe NHLers and young guys like that are trying to make a name for themselves. So it was certainly not if the Panthers didn't win, it wasn't a lack of effort issue. And honestly, Tarasov gives you a better, Bobrovsky was the backup. Tarasov, I feel like lately has been the better option. We saw Bobrovsky at Madison Square Garden on March 29th, but the Rangers were going for the season sweep, but the Panthers were able to salvage that and find a way to win this one with, again, no one in the lineup. It was way less than last game. Last game, I call that the unrecognizable Panthers, but that one had Matthew Tkachuk in it. That had Aaron Ekblad, Seth Jones. Kulikov might have been in that lineup. Carter Verhaeghe, I think, may have been in that lineup. But yeah, I mean, no Brad Marchand, obviously, which had already been the case. No Sam Bennett, no Anton Lundell. Like, Barkov's been out for the season. No Nico Mikkola. Go on and on and on. I mean, there were not that many guys. The only really mainstay, like Panther guys of the last couple cups was really Gustav Forsling and I'd say Luosterainen. Other than that, it's really at best fourth line type guys. Guys that are in and out of the lineup. And the Rangers pretty much were rolling with their main crew, and it wasn't good enough. I felt like the Rangers were a little bit sort of loose in their own end. If as much as the Rangers in the third period dominated play and, effort was there, I do feel like they were, again, a little bit loose is the word that I would use, where they could have been a little bit more buttoned up. And so the Panthers, like the few chances that they did get were pretty high quality, I felt like. And the Panthers, in terms of odd man rush possibilities and things like that, like they were there for them. Um, and they did take advantage of it in certain cases. The Ranger power play, yet again, like it did against Dallas, fails them. And they had a late power play chance. And I was waiting for the Rangers to just win this thing. I'm glad they didn't. But I thought it was going to happen. So, um, goalie matchup, like I said, Quick versus Tarasov. Game in Florida, which was the first and only meeting where the Panthers were the home team with a roof. Obviously, on January 2nd, they played at the Miami Marlins Stadium in the Winter Classic. So this was the first time that the Rangers had played in Florida in about a year. If you remember, I was actually at that game. It was the one game where the Rangers had a 2-goal comeback win. It was actually Matthew Robertson's NHL debut. I was frustrated that they won the game, and they went on to win again against Tampa the last game of the year at Madison Square Garden. This year it's in Tampa, but some weird similarities in terms of end of schedule, but very different circumstances. But in this one, pretty slow type beginning, but you did get a couple of penalties early. 58 seconds in, a too many men on the ice penalty on the Panthers. So with that, they, are on the kill, but the Rangers are unable to score. That power play, which had been red hot, really, really good when the Rangers were winning games and even a little beyond that. I think the Ranger power play is somewhere in the top five. I think it might have been fourth going into this game, but again, they were 0 for 5 against Dallas, 0 for 3 in this game. Will Cooley at 4:02 takes a tripping penalty, tripping Wilmer Skog, and the Panthers are unsuccessful in that power play. That was the one power play they got all game, was that Will Cooley penalty. But at 9:35, the Panthers get on the board, and it's Cole Reinhardt, no relation to Sam, and the last name's actually spelt differently. But it's Cole Reinhardt from Bjornfoot and Hinostroza at 9:35. And this was a play where it was the Ranger fourth line was on with Fortescue and Schneider. It was sort of an end-to-end goal, transitional goal for the Panthers, where there was some speed going into the Rangers end. Fortescue and Schneider had both just jumped on. A little bit of a 3-on-2 situation. And it's a shot by Bjornfoot, pretty juicy rebound, and Reinhardt is able to cash in to make it 1-0 Panthers. And then less than 2 minutes later, Mackie Samoskevich scores his 12th goal of the season unassisted, 11:31. This was not a great play by Braden Schneider. Braden Schneider at the Ranger, at the point in the Panther zone, takes a shot that is blocked by Samoskevich, and he takes it the other way and scores past Jonathan Quick under the crossbar. It's JT Miller that feeds it to Schneider, takes his time. It gets blocked. Samoskevich beats Schneider, and again, gets that goal. It went right in and out, but it's a good goal. And again, Braden Schneider, there's just been too many of those moments this season for Braden Schneider, where I think his play has been better lately. He was really out of his element when Adam Fox was out, and he was playing way more minutes. He's been a little bit better down the stretch, but all's to say that Braden Schneider, he could certainly be on the trade block come the offseason. So 2-0 Panthers on the Samoskevich goal. But the Rangers do score a goal by the end of the first period, and it's Matthew Robertson, who, like I said, made his NHL debut last year in Florida and has had a pretty successful rookie campaign. And it's a face-off win by Noah Laba. So that fourth line that was on for the first goal is able to, be on the board for this one. It was a face-off win by Laba. Robertson takes the shot, a little bit of a screen in front with Hamelosh in there in front of Tarasov. And so again, Robertson's 6th goal of the year from Laba at 15-19 cuts it to 2-1. That's the score going to the second period. Shots on goal in the first, 7-7. Second period, 2:01 in, and it is Skog who trips Will Cooley. And the Rangers are unsuccessful on that power play. At 14:48, and not a whole lot to speak of really here. Some good saves on both ends with Quick and Tarasov, but at 14:48, it's matching roughing minors to Ty Karche and Luke Cunnin. So 4-on-4 for a bit, no scoring there. But soon thereafter, about 30 seconds after, at 17:20, Gabe Perreault scores his 11th goal of the season from Fox and Lafreniere. So this was one where it's a rush for the Rangers. Zibanejad takes it up the ice, drops it off for Lafreniere, finds Fox streaking up the middle. He takes a shot, and the rebound goes off of Tarasov right to Perreault, and it goes off of Perreault and in. So kind of, again, right place, right time for Gabe Perreault, where he needed to be, and it deflects off him and in to tie the game up at 2 with 2:40 left in the second period. So the score is tied going to the third, and I'm thinking, okay, Rangers are going to find with Jonathan Quick, with this Panther lineup, Rangers are going to find a way to win. Somehow they don't, even though the Rangers really dominated the third. Shots on goal were 6-6 in the second. In the third, it was 13-4 Rangers. And it to me, it just seemed like a matter of time. But it would be Skog at 13:49 being called for a closing his hand on the puck penalty. You don't see that too often, but it was correctly called. It was behind the Ranger net, and Rangers had a power play. And the number one unit was on for almost all of it. They don't score. And with a minute and 50 seconds left, Cole Reinhardt scores his 2nd goal of the game, his 8th goal of the season from Cunnin and Sabarenko. And it was Robertson and Borgen were pinned in for a while. The Zibanejad line was on as well. And Panthers were cycling around. And Cunnin finds Reinhardt, who snaps it over the glove side high against Jonathan Quick to give the Panthers a 3-2 lead again. It seemed as if specifically Robertson and Borgen were gassed, unable to get the puck out of the zone. And eventually the Panthers take advantage of it to give them that lead. Jonathan Quick was pulled. Rangers trying to tie the game up, but they were unable to do so, and the Rangers loses to regulation. Jonathan Quick's last NHL game goes down as a loss. Panthers win 3-2 for Jonathan Quick. His final line, not a great one. 14 saves on 17 shots. But, an unbelievable career for Jonathan Quick. So yeah, like I said, for the Rangers, record now 33, 39, and 9. They now sit at NHL 500 for that road record, 19-19 and 2. So that last Lightning game will determine, where that ends up. But things are looking pretty good for that number 3 spot. As I was recording this, the Kings have officially clinched a playoff spot. So again, a little less urgency in that last Calgary game. And again, the Flames take on a Colorado team that has nothing to play for. It's obviously a good team. I'm not sure what their lineup will look like exactly. I mean, but you're looking at a pretty good situation for the Rangers right now. And I would be very pleased if they can lock up this number 3 spot and at worst be number 5 if all things went totally wrong. I think that'd be a pretty good situation for them to really land a top-end player in the draft. But again, as I'm recording this, the odds have improved, obviously, because going into these games, it was anywhere from 3-6. Now it's from 3-4, and 3 is looking more likely than 4. So, next game, it could be a weird one. Like I said, Dylan Garand, I think maybe he gets the start. What does the lineup look like? Who knows? For the Rangers, they could be locked into the number 3 spot if Calgary beats Colorado. For Tampa, they can't win the division, but what might be on the line is if Montreal gets at least a point against the Flyers, is that Tampa can play for home ice against the Canadiens in that first round series. So we'll see what the circumstances dictate come Wednesday night. But 81 games through, 1 game left, and Jonathan Quick's NHL career is over. He loses at the last moment to the Florida Panthers. Final score 3-2, and now the Rangers will head to Tampa to finish off this 2025-2026 season.